When even the phenomenon of waqfat has disappeared from his consciousness, he becomes the very phenomenon of light. Then his praise of God proceeds from God, and his knowledge is God's knowledge, who beholds himself alone as he was in the beginning. We need not expect to discover how this essential cessation, substitution, our transmutation is affected. It is the grand paradox of Sufism, the magnum opus wrought somehow and created man by a being whose nature is eternally devoid of the least taint of creatureliness. As I remarked above, the change, however it may be conceived, does not involve infusion of the divine essence, hulul, or identification with the divine and human natures, ittihad. Both of these doctrines are generally condemned. Abu Nasr al-Sarraj criticizes them in two passages of his Kitab al-Luma as follows. Some mystics of Baghdad have erred in their doctrine that when they pass away from their qualities, they enter into the qualities of God. This leads to incarnation, hulul, or to the Christian belief concerning Jesus. The doctrine in question has been attributed to some of the ancients, but its true meaning is this, that when man goes forth from his own qualities and enters into the qualities of God, he goes forth from his own will and enters into the will of God, knowing that his will is given to him by God, and that by virtue of this gift he is severed from regarding himself, so that he becomes entirely devoted to God. And this is one of the stages of Unitarians. Those who have erred in this doctrine have failed to observe the qualities of God, that the qualities of God are not God. To make God identical with his qualities is to be guilty of infidelity, because God does not descend into the heart, but that which descends into the heart is faith in God, and belief in his unity, and reverence for the thought of him. In the second passage, he makes use of a similar argument in order to refute the doctrine of ittihad. Some have abstained from food and drink, fancying that when a man's body is weakened, it is possible that he may lose his humanity and be invested with the attributes of divinity. The ignorant persons who hold this erroneous doctrine cannot distinguish between humanity and the inborn qualities of humanity. Humanity does not depart from man any more than blackness departs from that which is black, or whiteness from that which is white. But the inborn qualities of humanity are changed and transmuted by the all-powerful radiance that is shed upon them from the divine realities. The attributes of humanity are not the essence of humanity. Those who inculcate the doctrine of fana mean the passing away of regarding one's own actions and works of devotion through the continuance regarding God as the doer of these actions on behalf of his servant. Hujwiri characterizes as absurd the belief that passing away, fana, signifies loss of essence and destruction of corporeal substance, and that abiding, baqa, indicates the indwelling of God in man. Real passing away from anything, he says, implies consciousness of its imperfection and absence of desire for it. Whoever passes away from his own perishable will abides in the everlasting will of God, but human attributes cannot become divine attributes, or vice versa. The power of fire transforms to its own quality anything that falls into it, and surely the power of God's will is greater than that of fire, yet fire affects only the quality of iron without changing its substance, for iron can never become fire. In another part of his work, Hujwiri defines union, jam, as the concentration of thought upon the desired object. Thus Majnun, the Orlando Furiosa of Islam, concentrated his thoughts on Layla, so that he saw only her in the whole world, and all created things assumed the form of Layla in his eyes. Someone came to the cell of Bayezid and asked, "Is Bayezid here?" He answered, "Is anyone here but God?" The principle, in all such cases, Hujwiri adds, is the same, namely, that God divides the one substance of his love and bestows a particle thereof as a peculiar gift upon every one of his friends in proportion to their enravishment with him. Then he lets down upon that particle the shrouds of fleshliness and human nature and temperament and spirit, in order that by its powerful working it may transmute to its own quality all the particles that are attached to it, until the lover's clay is wholly converted into love, and all his acts and looks become so many properties of love. This state is named union alike by those who regard the inward sense and the outward expression. Then he quotes these verses of Halaj: Thy will be done, O my Lord and Master, thy will be done. O my purpose and meaning, O essence of my being, O goal of my desire, O my speech and my hints and my gestures, O all of my all, my hearing and my sight, O my whole and my element and my particles. The enraptured Sufi has passed beyond the illusion of subject and object and broken through to the oneness, can either deny that he is anything or affirm that he is all things. As an example of the negative way, take the opening lines of an ode by Jalaluddin, which I have rendered into verse, imitating the metrical form of the Persian as closely as the genius of our language will permit. Lo, for I to myself am unknown. Now in God's name, what must I do? I adore not the cross nor the crescent. I am not a Ur nor a Jew, east nor west, land nor sea is my home. I've kin nor with angel nor gnome. I'm wrought not of fire nor of foam. I'm shaped not of dust nor of dew.